Okay, welcome to episode 29 of the Cybersecurity Happy Hour podcast. I am your host, Christie. I'm the principal cybersecurity consultant at Intex IT. I am very excited to welcome our special guest for today's episode. I'm really excited. And the topic really today is the cybersecurity ecosystem at Diamante Blockchain. And my guest today is Arijit Biswas, the Chief Technical Officer at Diamante Blockchain. A warm welcome to you. I'm very pleased to welcome you, Pascal Arijit.
Thanks, Christy. Pleasure is all mine. Thanks for having me on your podcast today. Pleasure.
Oh, brilliant. I'm so happy to be here. Okay, so I'm just going to introduce yourself to our listeners. Just give a brief information about yourself and your role at Diamante Blockchain.
Audible?
Yes.
Audible. Okay, great. So, Christy, I'm heading the technology department for Diamante, and it's been like close to 4 years being associated with Diamante. And there are various technology stacks, starting from the fintech journey, including of payments rails, and various decentralized app on the top of our native network, that is Diamanté. And apart from that, we are also hosting various decentralized applications for leading financial institutions. So that comprises of banks, wealth management institutions, portfolio institutions, and leading exchanges. And apart from that, we have a very strong presence in diamond industries, where we are been strongly collaborated with leading diamond industries in handling their auctions platforms, which comprises of implementation of augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and blockchain.
Okay,
so
fantastic.
thank you.
So I think a lot of people today are familiar with blockchain and familiar with cryptocurrencies. I think various types of currencies. But really, what exactly is Diamante Blockchain? So what is it? How does yours differ, or what similarities?
So I'll just give a bit of an overview of how we initiated the Diamante Net. So Diamante Net is a layer 2 network that initiated from its native blockchain, that is Stellar, in 2018, and we evolved from there onwards in adding different additional security features, and apart from that, handling the transaction latency and overall scalability of the network. So that was our prime agenda in the term of restructuring the blockchain network for handling various financial transactions, payments, and cross-border cross-border use cases. So this is how the inception happened. And if we talk about more in detail about how blockchain Diamante Net differs from the existing blockchain networks, as in like Ripple, Stellar, Ethereum, Bitcoin. So Diamante Net is a fourth generation network which works on a federated Byzantine algorithm, and the main consensus is PBFT, that is the practical federated Byzantine fault tolerance algorithm, which is the core consensus mechanism for Diamante Net. And it actually is one of the fastest network in the terms of the operational speed or in the terms of the transactional scalability. So if we understand like from how the native network has evolved from the generation by generation, like from first generation to the existing one. So the Bitcoin at the earliest, when the transaction got initiated and processed, it was more of like a network transaction would usually take an hour to get it completed and validated. Whereas right now in our network, we can handle almost like 75,000 transactions per second. This is a concurrent transaction I'm talking about, which can be eventually scalable to a level of 1 million transactions per second. So obviously that gives a huge boost when we talk about a financial payments or transaction that gets processed in any financial institutions comprising of a bank. It comprises of financial exchanges, maybe for a corporate who are been indulged in various trade finance activities. So this is where we differ from the existing one.
Sounds very interesting. Now, as you're aware, we in this podcast we're really interested in security and of any application and networks and any sort of infrastructure. So how do you secure your particular technology? So the technology that you use, how secure is it?
So as we always understand the blockchain itself as it terms itself as one of the secure layer for any sort of an application. Blockchain, its more principle is on the terms of immutability and transparency, right? So in that
Yeah.
perspective, yes, Diamanté is a very secure blockchain network, but it has different layers of security protocols that ensures that the users or the validators or the archivers, the watchers, whoever the stakeholders in the ecosystem of Diamanté are ensured with a high level of security protocols. Now, in terms of the definition of the protocols, we have 3 layers of protocol definitions, which is one that gets deployed on the core itself, which is more on the wallet security for the users. So what happens when a user comes into the network or the ecosystem, they need to ensure that they have certain amount of the native digital assets, that is DM, and in that perspective, they need to have a wallet. This wallet is highly secured using an ECDSA algorithm, which ensures that their private seeds are well protected and that is immutable, that's not hackable by any other a hacker or any sort of a malicious activity that can get present in the network. This is the layer 1 of security. Then now we will get into the layer of the services or the API layer. So in that, we have a different geographical constraint layers, which ensures that only the whitelisted IPs or the whitelisted validators can only ensure a sort of a transaction on the network. So we don't claim or we don't actually entertain the fact that a blockchain, although it's a decentralized in nature, will actually entertain any person to act as a validator in the system. So for the validators or the archivers or the watchers, whoever want to be a part of this ecosystem, they need to go through definite checks in the terms of their KYC, their operational checks. So only a registered validators or the stakeholders in the ecosystem place a sort of an activity in the network. So this is the level 2 of the security. Now, when we come on to the final structure or the API services encryption. So while calling the services of the network, each of the API services has a level of a security map, which have a client ID, a client security key, which only the registered user in the environment only have. So if I'm not a registered entity of the environment, I will not have that sort of a key pair to initiate my API calls to the service layer. So in that perspective, automatically you are having a sort of a restrictions to communicate with our network. So this way, our network is highly secure. It's obviously being a part of Diamanté with the team. I can obviously ensure that the security has been well taken in consideration, since we majorly work on the payments domain, the financial domains. That plays a very key role in the terms of giving the security aspect.
That's fantastic. I mean, you've mentioned the layers of your transactional security, because you have mentioned previously that you have over 75,000 transactions per second. And of course, it's actually a huge amount of transactions. And you've explained what the various layers are. And you specifically actually mentioned also you use secure encryption, which is good news. Do you also use a combination of hash? Is hashing applied with the encryption, a secure hash?
Definitely, Christie. The hashing is a part of your the layer mapping. So what we talk about when we talk about any algorithm, so the algorithm actually does what? It creates a set of pairs for the transaction integrity process. Now, in that perspective, when we have a first level of a key that gets generated as a wallet pair, we do 2 checks. One is what we call a multi-factor check, in which the key pairs are get split and they get remapped or rehashed. And second is a concatenation of hashing. So once this key pair has got generated, we concatenate the hashed key, and again we do a rehashing of that key. So actually, what happens? The initial seed is never been accessed or never gets like what should I say? It never gets accessed by any other person or acknowledged by any other person because it has been multiple hashed. So in that perspective, there is a multi-level of a hashing for each of the security layers or each set of wallet key pairs.
Okay, it sounds extra secure. Okay, I believe that to confirm this, what is your levels of testing? How do you test it? Is it the initial stage during the quality assurance stage, or do you do on third-party pen testing frequent basis?
So on the terms of testing, so there are three different stages of testing. What, as you just stated, that the pen testing or the penetration testing or vulnerability testing. So each layer. So if I talk about on a network perspective, we do obviously go with a deep level of penetration testing and a vulnerability testing on a frequent basis, like maybe like accordingly a weekly basis, or maybe sometimes it's a monthly basis. But we do have a runtime check for handling that sort of test purposes. For the application also, we do need to ensure that what is the amount of like the API threads that is getting counted? What is the bandwidth that our network is handling? Maybe you will be aware that very recently Solana as a blockchain that has recently got sloshed because of a huge pool of transaction actually hit the network, and that become an issue for that. So the network collapsed. So in terms of a high amount, we do also do a rigorous test, what we call a sanity testing of the API services layers. And apart from that, we also do a more of a load balancing testing of the serviceless layers.
With the load balancing, of course, then that obviously reduces the bottlenecks. Obviously, if you reduce the bottlenecks, then the denial service kind of attack will not happen. Okay, that is really good to know. Okay, now you've talked a lot about the server side security. What about the client side? What are you responsible for the client side security, or does the client take what responsibility is passed to the client? What are the risks passed?
Yeah, that is one of the most interesting question, I guess, that needs to be addressed. Now, handling the security of a client or the end user becomes very much challenging because anyways, we can't have a control on their wallets. Once a wallet gets issued, it becomes very much important for the clients to understand the nitty-gritty of the security that they need to put forward, right? So we don't have any sort of an access to the security keys of the wallets that gets generated. It is entirely depends on the user, how well they want to protect their seeds or the secret keys. Whether that they want to preserve in their cold wallet or they want to store in their USB drives or in their hard disk or within the cloud environment, it entirely depends on them. So we don't have any sort of a control or any sort of an access on them.
Choice is left to the end user to secure their wallet however they wish, and they secure it. If they don't secure it at all, it gets hacked, or then I suppose the risk is on them, really.
To an extent, yes. We do obviously a check at the time of the transaction. So for example, you are having a Diamante wallet. Now, at the time of processing a transaction, it becomes very important that the client passes their secret key, right? Now, most of the time, what happens that the secret key, being a user, you might have actually shared your secret key with your colleagues or your friends, your family members. And that perspective, this key might sometimes actually gets used anonymously or in a malicious way. But in the terms of transaction, apart from the security key, we also ensure a multi-layer validation. Like you are transacting and you have to pass any sort of a challenging answer to maybe like a two-factor OTP you have to pass, or maybe you have to answer a riddle at the time of initiating a transaction, which ensures that you are the exact user of that wallet. You are the owner of that wallet, and you are only facilitating that sort of a transaction. Now, post of which, once the transaction gets processed, we don't have any sort of a control. That is, it gives us an impression that if you have
Yeah,
that answer of that riddle or you have that OTP of your validation along with the secret key, you are the owner of the transaction.
of course.
So in that, yeah. So this is the only check that we as in the terms of the network security, we ensure to be placed in the terms of services or the transactions.
If the end user shares a private key and also the details of the multi-factor authentication, then obviously is on them. But on your side, where I suppose the public keys are stored on your servers, if they have the private key
The public
authentication,
keys, yes,
then
the public keys are stored on the network, and those
yes,
are like hashed multiple times.
yeah.
So they are well secured in the core of the network.
Now, one question you talk about hashing, you haven't answered yet, is that so is the hash secure hash? Because we have many forms of hashing technology, and some are strong and some are like Swiss cheese. So is the hash secure, a secure hash as well?
Yes, definitely. So we don't follow a single algorithm. So at the time
Yeah,
of rehashing, we have a different set of an algorithm. So it becomes effectively very strong
yeah,
for only the internal stakeholders to understand. But for the
yeah.
external stakeholders or external users, they will never be able to understand what are the sort of algorithms that have been implemented at the time of hashing. So, for example,
Okay.
if you have a hashing mechanism maybe of an SHA 256 or maybe a 512, only that is
Yeah,
the hashing algorithm that you are implementing on the other time of hashing mechanism. It becomes easy
yeah.
for maybe an ethical hacker or maybe a spoofer to estimate and to just decrypt it. But
That's right.
what if your hashing algorithms is a combination of maybe like one or two or maybe of multiple algorithms? Then it becomes very
Yes,
challenging.
of
It becomes
course.
very tough. And so that is what we have implemented, and that is the way we ensure the security of the transaction.
Oh, fantastic. Also, I feel that what your answers are very, very reassuring to those who are definitely use the Diamante blockchain. Now, you've mentioned again, you've talked about your three levels of application checks, and you've talked about the periodic testing of your apps on your networks. Now, is there anything else you would like to add before we round up?
So yes, as at the initiation when we had a discussion, and you stated that whether the testing that is done is entirely done through our end, or is there inside of a third party auditor who does validate that sort of
Yes,
a security checks? Yes, we do that.
yes.
Obviously, our testing reports gets revalidated by the leading testing assurance companies or the validators, which I should say. So they do a
Yeah,
periodic checks on the reports that gets
yeah.
generated on our environment. And accordingly, they keep us suggesting what should be this next step forward, which can ensure more of a scalable ecosystem, more of a secure ecosystem for the end users.
Hmm.
So we are
Okay.
more of centric to the security of the network.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
should ensure the financial stability of the end user in our ecosystem. And apart from that, having a leverage of the security of what we call the next gen blockchain. So that is our core
Okay.
agenda in handling this.
There is some sort of segregation, which kind of provides some kind of defense in depth. Good, because then it secures, I mean, one aspect if there is any vulnerabilities. Now, you mentioned again, I was coming back to the testing. Once because some you do identify, no system is 100% perfect. Once you find weaknesses, the third party auditors have written a report. Do you act on the findings, or what is the process of that? Or do you retest just for that final verification?
So, Christy, like when we talk about a security in terms of scalability,
Yeah,
both of the things can't work on parallel in an ecosystem. If you want to
yeah,
have more of a secure architecture, then automatically you're to an extent compromising the scalability because there are multiple process of security
yeah.
layers that puts for implemented in the network. So we, in terms, obviously, when we have implemented such of a secure layer, we do understand that there are some bottlenecks or weakness that needs to be addressed in the scalability
Yes.
of the network. That is the only reason we said it's 75,000 TPS, and that can only be scaled to 1 million transactions per second. And we are still doing more of a research where we can
Yes.
actually create an environment to elaborate that to a next level of concurrent transactions. So this is one of the issues or a weakness we are still addressing. Our team is constantly working in handling that sort of issue and addressing to the challenges, get that things resolved. We are targeting maybe by 2023, we will be having that issues resolved and will come up with the
Mhm.
further updates and patches on the network.
So I've been speaking to Arijit Biswas, the Chief Technical Officer at Diamante Blockchain, and some of the key takeaways on this of the podcast is to discuss the security and the performance at Diamante Blockchain. We discussed the security levels and the encryptions, especially on the wallet security, the network process, and also what people are really interested today is, of course, how if multi-factor authentication is enforced, and which is, and your different levels of application checks. I'm so glad that you were our guest today. Do you have any closing words? And if anyone wants to connect with you, how can they find you?
So obviously you can directly connect me on my LinkedIn profile. That is Arijit Biswas 85. That's my LinkedIn profile. You can obviously get touch and I'll connect accordingly. That is one way. Apart from that, if you're interested in connecting me on my email ID is arijit@diamanteblockchain.com. You can just drop an email and I'll obviously try to address to your queries or concerns at the earliest. And as
Brilliant.
a closing note for
Yes.
the system, I can just say a blockchain is just like, what should I say? It's beyond an ocean. It's the future technology. So for the people who are aspiring to learn, I should say it is a right time. You can just put your pedals very strong, give your time to learn this wonderful technology. It has a potential. It is what we are saying. It's a Web 3.2 as a generation of technology. So keep learning, stay foolish, stay hungry. That is what I should conclude as my note.
Thank you. So that wraps up this episode for today. Thank you for listening. Until next time. If you love this episode of the Cybersecurity Happy Hour podcast, head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christie. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.